Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. Tonight is March 13th, 2017. The show, of course, is being recorded on March 12th, 2017, in a very snowy South Carolina in March, interestingly enough. So we are going to try to talk about a lot of different topics tonight, foreign and domestic. We're going to talk about the potential for the Trump administration to relaunch the war against marijuana. We're going to talk about the question of parity, because we want to continue discussing solutions to our current crisis, and of course we can talk about some relative health issues and stuff like that are taking place that we can discuss. Also, the White Helmets documentary, which won the Oscar, is now being questioned by a number of medical doctors. We can discuss that. We can also discuss the recent videos coming out of Syria of the Turkish military and the Turkish-backed terrorists capturing and mistreating Syrian soldiers. If we have time, we'll get into the question over what's happening now, all of the machinations that are happening between Russia, Turkey, and Israel, as well as the United States. Now, not boding well for Syria, but we hope that there are other issues that will come up that will change that, and we'll take a look at that at some point. That might be a topic that we have to leave for next week. It just depends, because I want to get into the Vault 7 Wikileaks issue, and that's going to take some time. So perhaps we'll start with with what I mentioned first, the potential for the Trump administration to relaunch this stupid war on marijuana, and this is something that we have seen coming for some time with the nomination of Jeff Sessions, the drug war relic, to the post of Attorney General, and that's very, very unfortunate, as we've been mentioning here on this show for some time. So the nomination of Sessions already sent a message to most Americans that the policy that was under the Obama administration was by no means rational, but it was in some ways better than any administration regarding marijuana since Roosevelt. I don't know. I mean, maybe probably even further back. But we have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, the drug war policy was better under Obama than it had really been since we actually had a reasonable position on marijuana, which was no law at all. But that being said, the Obama administration policy on the drug war was not in any way rational. Remember, the DEA under Obama classified CBD oil as Schedule 1. So CBD oil, that many of the listeners to this show have probably tried, the DEA says it has no health benefit and is addictive and dangerous as heroin. That shows you why the DEA should no longer exist. And it also shows you that they are tied in lock, stock, and barrel with the big pharmaceutical companies and the police state industry, of which they are one of the major components of. So I'm not giving Obama praise, but what I am saying is, compared to the Bush years, compared to the Clinton years especially, compared to the other Bush years, and compared to the Reagan years, the policy on marijuana was getting slightly better. And I mean only slightly, and largely slightly better because of state laws and the hesitancy of the Obama administration to go out full on, head on, and attack these state laws. Now, there were instances, of course, where I think in California there was a state law allowing the specific amounts and types of marijuana to be grown or possessed, yet the DEA came in and arrested the person anyway, charged him under federal law. What we are concerned about is that the irrational Obama policy is going to be turned up a few notches under Trump, because with Obama's Attorney General, what you had was this obsession with banning guns, with prosecuting hate crimes, pushing political correctness. The guy literally said he wanted to brainwash people against guns. With the Trump administration, it looks like it's going to be switched a bit, because remember, under Holder, it was guns, it was self-defense, stuff like that, and also drugs, but of course a heavy focus on the ability of Americans to defend themselves. With Trump, it looks like it's going to be reversed a bit, and the focus is going to be on drugs and more drugs, and less so much on things like self-defense and guns. So once again, we see the sort of back and forth of the transition here. So what we have, I say all of that to point out that we have White House spokesman Sean Spicer now. He as Trump administration officials have been known to sort of spout off at the mouth. It doesn't appear that Sean Spicer was spouting off at the mouth. He suggests that marijuana will face greater enforcement under a Trump presidency. It's still unclear, though, what his policy on medical marijuana is going to be. This is what when he was asked about the legalization of marijuana, Spicer responded, "There's a difference between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, and I think when you see something like the opiate addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing we should be doing is encouraging people. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by in terms of recreational marijuana and other drugs of that nature." He was asked a follow-up question regarding enforcement. He said, "That's a question for the Department of Justice. I do believe that you will see greater enforcement of it." Okay, well, he's right. There is a difference between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. It's the question of intent. If you're going to consume marijuana for a health issue, it's medical. If you're going to consume it for something else, it's recreational. Big, fat, hairy deal. We don't care. It's still a plant, and that's where it should stop. He says, "I think you see something like the opiate addiction crisis blossoming." Marijuana is not an opiate, jackass. It doesn't have the same qualities of OxyContin or oxycodone, and it doesn't have the same qualities as heroin. It's not addictive at all. Habit forming, maybe, in the same sense that television watching is habit forming, and other behaviors are habit forming. To my knowledge, there's not a behavior in the world that's not habit forming, depending on the personality and the mental state of the person that is engaging in it. But marijuana is not addictive, and I don't care that Lady Gaga says she was addicted to marijuana cigarettes, since we're going back to the 50s here. Lady Gaga either doesn't know what she's talking about, or she's so invested in the victim image that she even has to be the victim of a little plant. We're not interested either in Lady Gaga's opinion of drug laws. We're interested in constitutional opinions and the rights of the American people, which is to consume plants if they so choose. So he's pointing toward a ramping up of the drug war for people who consume marijuana for recreational purposes and possibly for medical purposes without the permission of a doctor. Because in America, unlike some third world countries in Central and South America, you actually have to go beg you have to go pay and beg a medical doctor, suck up to his massive ego, make him think that it was his idea, because if he thinks it's your idea, you won't get the prescription. And then, with his permission, you can go to the pharmacy and purchase these different types of medications and use them under his guidance and his permission, his authority. In these third world countries, South and Central America, for instance, you can use your own brain, and you can go to the pharmacy yourself and buy pills yourself and go home and take them and live with the consequences. It's funny that we're promoting freedom and democracy across the world when we should actually give it a try here for a change and see what happens. There was a time when you could actually go get real heavy drugs and morphine and stuff from the pharmacy on your own in America. And the last time I checked, we didn't have nearly the amount of drug addiction in the United States that we do today, when we have these massive industries and institutions dedicated to preventing people from consuming plants. But I don't want to go on a rant about this much longer. I talked about it a little bit last week, and unfortunately, here's what I would suggest to the Trump administration, since it appears that there is this back and forth between one half of the deep state and perhaps the other half of the deep state, unless it's all theater. But if Trump wants to gain credibility in the eyes of the American people, and if you really wanted to throw a monkey wrench into your opposition, then legalize it or decriminalize it. Then direct the head of the DEA to immediately declassify marijuana as a Schedule anything drug. If you want to be really conservative about it, you could put it at Schedule 3, but if you wanted to be somewhat rational, you can direct them to remove it from the schedules at all and announce that. And if the head of the DEA says, no, unfortunately, this is not, we can't do this, then fire him, get rid of him, and do it yourself. Get somebody in there who will do it and follow orders. And then you can send a message to your opponents, and of course the opponents out on the street who have an interest in seeing marijuana legalized or decriminalized would most likely come around to your side. But we do see at the county level, for instance, Harris County, Texas, which includes Houston, that we have Harris County DA Kim Ogg and Houston city officials. They're taking a step away from caging peaceful people for the possession and use of plants. And we have a new policy being enacted by Harris County. Law enforcement will no longer arrest, and the DA will no longer prosecute most marijuana possession cases that are under 4 ounces beginning on March 1st. So that's already begun. You'll have, they estimate that the new policy is going to keep thousands of people out of jail, save the county millions of dollars. DA Ogg said at 107,000 cases over the last 10 years, we have spent in excess of $250 million collectively prosecuting a crime that has produced no tangible evidence of improved public safety. Finally, somebody with a brain. $250 million of taxpayer money putting peaceful people in cages over the use of a plant. Nobody can claim that that's based on reason or rationality or anything other than the fact that the United States government wants to continue a policy that builds the foundations of a police state, that the law enforcement industry wants to continue sucking up taxpayer dollars and playing army, and that the prison industrial complex can continue to reap in billions of dollars in profit, and of course Big Pharma. So nobody can claim that that's anything other than what it is. We also have, we won't get into the quotes of the people supporting the plan, but we would like to reach out and congratulate the DA, Kim Ogg, and Houston city officials for doing this. This is a step in the right direction. Perhaps it's going to take local areas, counties, cities, and of course states just refusing to prosecute in order to make some really decent changes here. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about domestically was the question of parity, and I want to go ahead and get started on this now because I don't want to wait to the end of the show and have to rush through this, because it's a topic that's seemingly complicated, and it's a topic that most Americans don't know about, and it's a topic that even farmers don't really know about. It seems alien to most people. But we have an agricultural crisis in the United States, and Parity is an example of how to end it. Now, we know that farming is by nature an up and down game, and it has a lot of variables going into the production of food that can drive the both the prices and the production of the food. And throughout American history, world history, we know that agriculture has been susceptible to climate, to weather, to human action, war, economic policy, all that stuff. But one thing has always remained constant, and that's the fact that human society totally depends upon the ability of farmers to produce food. It's a simple realization, but it's a powerful one. The death of the farmer is not just the death of a nation or of a society, it's the death of humanity as a whole. Now, in the United States, since the early 1900s, the entire country has experienced a number of farm crises, right? Some as a result of weather and climate disasters. Honestly, most of them as a result of government policy. And by that, I mean the inability of the U.S. government to ensure that farmers actually have an incentive to produce the food. We made it through the Dust Bowl. We made it through the Great Depression. And now we have lived to establish, we actually have already seen the establishment of perhaps the greatest or near greatest fair agricultural system in the world up until the 1950s, when that system was ended with the advent of the 1980s farm crisis, a series of weather events, a series of mainly big banking events, big corporate events that saw the big banks and big corporations take the place of family farmers, which is a process that is continuing to this day. But in 2017, there are very few family farmers, right? They largely don't exist. The American farming is in the worst shape of American history ever in 2017. Now, we do have a food revolution that is taking place at the grassroots level. This, it's an attempt by a food revolution. I mean, an attempt to produce good, clean, non-GMO, natural food, local food at a smaller level. But in terms of who actually provides the average meal to the average American, that's what I'm referring to. Big agriculture has an undeniable monopoly. There is the food revolution. There are so many people out there now who are trying to start farms, organic farms, local farms, etc., small farms, because they see the need for clean food, they see the need for getting away from big corporations. But we have to be honest, this is sort of a niche market. The average consumer in the United States is buying food from big agricultural corporations. The amount of people who are engaged in clean organic farming, there's not enough of them to feed the rest of the country, because the big monopolies are coming in and they've gotten control over it. Farmers who try to survive under the yoke of big agricultural corporations find themselves creating massive profits for the corporate vampires, but the farmer is surviving off of government subsidies and taxpayer subsidies. So low market prices bring in very little revenue, but then high costs have many farmers living in the red. Even if they're not concerned with the quality of the food or whether or not it's natural, this is still the case for most farmers. Despite low market prices being fetched by the farmer, consumers are still seeing their food costs rise every year. And I'll explain why that's the case and what the solutions are in a minute. But clearly, the practice of subsidies is a very bad idea, and it's one that's it's not sustainable and it's not desirable. We're essentially keeping farmers on the government dole and not only on the dole, but at subsistence levels. And that cannot continue to be the policy of a first world nation in the 21st century. But you can't simply eliminate subsidies and allow agriculture and food to become just another product on the market. That's even worse, particularly now that the market is being controlled by big agricultural companies, corporations, and Wall Street. Now, I'll give you some statistics here. Between 1935 and 2014, that's going to be our years of statistics here. This was a period where the U.S. population more than doubled. The amount of farms, however, decreased 3 times over. The population doubles, but the amount of farms in America goes down 3 times. In 1935, there were 6.8 million farms and 127 million Americans. That's 1 farm for every 19 Americans. In 2014, there were fewer than 2.2 million farms for every 313 million Americans, for 313 million Americans. So that's 1 farm for every 142 people. So that's pretty stunning. In 1935, farming was 21% of the American labor force. Now, or in 2014, it's 0.7. So, 1935, average farm was 154.8 acres. In 2014, 418. So, what's the reason for this? It's simple. Major agricultural companies took over American agriculture, and as a result, corporate farming became the norm, and it required larger numbers of acres for these massive operations to engage in their type of farming. In terms of percentage, obviously the biggest farms are smallest in number. That stands to reason, but they make up for the majority of the market in terms of sales. They make up for 70% of 70% of farms are not producing a livable income. 70%. Now I know the market, free market people are going to respond that, if you can't make a profit, then you shouldn't be a business. Well, okay. All right, let's eliminate 70% of the food supply and see how free market ideology works out. Now, we also have another facet of the problem, and that's Wall Street. Wall Street has compounded the problem by the practice of unregulated commodity speculation, or essentially betting on the price of food. In short, what we have is commodity speculation as it relates to food is the practice of betting on the price of specific foods in the future and then locking in the wager early on. So speculation tends to raise the price of food every year, but it does have theoretically the ability to lower prices at times where it seems to always do that when it's the worst possible time for farmers for prices to drop. And then what's interesting is that that's incredibly rare, but when it happens, you tend to see a lot of farmers go out of business, and then who comes in to buy up those farms? They get even bigger with the mergers. Speculation has overwhelmingly tended to raise the cost of food every year. It enriches nobody but the banks. Farmers and consumers pay all the cost of production, all the cost of distribution and consumption, and massive corporations and banks just reap all the profits. So what's the solution to this situation? It's parity. Now, parity as an agricultural policy has been ignored for so long that even most modern-day farmers have no idea what it even is, and much less that it was perhaps the most successful policy of its type in modern American history. It seems like only older farmers or people who are actually educated on agricultural policy seem to even be slightly aware of it, and this isn't by mistake. Currently, not only does big agricultural companies make millions of dollars in profit and maintain a virtual monopoly on the American food supply, Wall Street's able to fleece farmers and consumers as well. So you have big corporations in concert with Wall Street. They've seen millions of family farms disappear and become replaced with major farming operations that use GMOs and hybrid patented technologies, and the farms themselves are beholden to major international corporations. So as it stands, food prices are determined by the market. Only they aren't really determined by the market so much as they're determined by the commodities futures markets. And it's here that the prices are manipulated up or down by speculators. Now, profits have gone sky high for Wall Street commodity speculators and big corporations, but prices actually paid to farmers have actually been driven down. So you can see here that it's a big scam, right? That the current American agricultural economy is set up where big agricultural corporations sit off to the side while franchise farmers do most of the work. And these farmers get paid often well below what it costs to actually produce the food. The American taxpayer then pays subsidies to the farmer via tax money so the farmer can survive. And as a result of all this, Wall Street speculators can sit back, get fatter, while the farmer and the consumer pay more for less return. In fact, the consumer is paying twice. Don't forget about that, because the consumer is actually paying for the food at the market, but he's also paying in taxes to subsidize the farmers who aren't making enough, because Wall Street and big corporations are parasitizing off of the farmer. So what is parity? Parity is essentially a minimum wage for farmers. It guarantees that farmers at least make more than it costs to produce various crops. Despite the fact that the parity system is no longer being implemented, the USDA continues to collect data regarding the cost of production and then calculates what would be the fair cost of production for specific crops. So what this means is the policy itself is not being implemented, but the USDA by law still has to collect the data and put together the official fair price of a crop, right? So the calculation process is pretty simple. It basically takes into consideration the cost of production, like seed, land, tractors, fuel, etc., and divides by the number of bushels that can be produced for these costs. And that is the parity cost. Now, parity pricing is only a few short calculations away, because you factor in all that information above, along with commodity prices and purchasing power, which are tied to a historical base period. Also, a living wage, inflation, etc. That's parity pricing. In other words, a minimum or living wage for farmers is what you arrive at through these calculations. Now, parity was first introduced during the period of the New Deal, when the U.S. federal government guaranteed the purchase of storable crops like rice, corn, wheat, oats, etc. at or very near parity prices, which had the effect of creating a minimum wage or sometimes a living wage for farmers. Today, farmers are only paid a fraction of parity for their crops. If you go back to the year 2014, the National Agricultural Statistics Service reported that at best, farmers only received 46% of parity for certain crops. Many crops were even lower than that. So you can see that farmers are only being paid half at best of what they need to earn a living. And then, of course, as a result of that, a system of subsidies was introduced which forces farmers to live on the government dole, but still have a living at all, barely have a living at all. So you gotta look, because of the structure of most big corporate operations. Major industrial multinational food corporations suck up most of the subsidies, because they actually claim that they're small farms, because it's like a franchise. But this form of subsidization causes consumers to pay twice for their food, once at the marketplace and again at tax time. Now, parity would ensure that farmers are able to make a living wage, and that the most important aspect of a national economy and the population as a whole is safeguarded. But it also would go great lengths toward breaking up multinational operations and reducing farm size, returning farms back to real farmers and families, and encouraging the production of clean, natural, non-GMO food if implemented properly. It also moved toward diversifying American agriculture, which is trending more and more toward monoculture, which is extremely dangerous, not just for the country, not just for the economy, but for the world in terms of food supply. So here's the question. Here's the biggest argument against parity, and the argument is that it would increase food costs. Now, this is what we've got to talk about. The answer to this question is a little bit more complicated, but some estimates suggest that food prices would rise up to about 15% if we implemented parity today. Others suggest that the prices would end up being somewhere between current cost and organic costs. Now, there are people out there who might say, whatever, look at the price, it's 15% more, you get, farmers get a living wage, and eventually you get cleaner food. But that's concerning to me and to most people, because inflation and the fact that food costs are already rising, the fact that we have 25% unemployment in the country, that's incredible. A 15% increase in the price of food is incredibly frightening, especially if you've ever tried to buy organic. Then you'll know how frightening it is to try to feed a family on organic prices. You'll know how impossible it is. It's nearly impossible to feed a family on regular crap food prices if you're not making a lot of money. But here's what these analysts and these individuals who argue that parity would increase food costs, what they forget to mention is that right now you as a consumer are paying for your food twice. Again, the market, then in food subsidies. You're paying twice because of the refusal of the market to ensure a living wage for farmers, and because Wall Street is driving food prices up for the consumer but down below parity for farmers. So with that being said, parity pricing essentially eliminates the ability of Wall Street to manipulate and drive up the cost of food. During the period of 1942 to 1952, when we had a parity system, the commodity futures market in the United States essentially shut down due to parity prices. They weren't betting. The reason is because if there's a floor beyond which food prices cannot fall and a ceiling beyond which food prices cannot rise, the ability to gamble on the rise and fall of those prices is greatly diminished. Now, I would suggest that not only the natural disintegration of the commodities futures markets would be useful, but a crackdown on commodity future speculation should be implemented as well, just to serve to eliminate any rise in prices, right? No more betting on food. You guys can go bet in Las Vegas, go play with some derivatives that we hopefully would tax at 1%, but you can't bet on food prices and kill off farmers and starve the American people for some profit. Now, with parity pricing in place and the commodity futures speculation markets under control, consumers would be paying about the same as they are now at the marketplace, but farmers would be making a living wage. The living wage for farmers would then reduce the necessity of corporate farming and the reliance on big corporations for agricultural products and bare subsistence level existence. It would also contribute to fewer GMOs and it would contribute to cleaner local food. There is also the question of a possible temporary price shock. Now, during the transition from subsidies to parity, there's a very short period of time in which living wages are paid, but which the last vestiges of commodities future speculation might possibly continue. But this price shock could easily be mitigated by a crackdown on the speculation markets. You could even ban or eliminate their ability to manipulate the prices of food if you have to. It would also be possible to temporarily continue a subsidy program that's phased out as parity is phased in, the commodity speculation is phased out, which redirects subsidies toward food companies, farmers that would be phased out to make up for that price shock. It's not rocket science. It can be done easily. Now, parity pricing in agricultural policy in general affects more than farmers and even more than consumers as a whole. We have income which flows into various areas of the real economy, whether it's wages, salaries, corporate and small business income, rental properties, virtually everything else. they're generally balanced in stable ratios to each other. And this makes sense because as technology changes and progress takes place, these ratios change, but they always remain generally balanced, and at least they should. I'll give you a simple example. All right, a pencil. In order to make a pencil, pencils affect more than just the pencil industry. You got to have wood, you've got to have metal for the eraser holder, you've got to have lead for the pencil lead. The pencil is going to require the lumber industry, which the lumber industry needs saws, and it needs trucks, and it needs lumber yards, and it requires metal saw blades and other machinery. And all the workers in the lumber yards and all that, they require wages, and each business needs profit. So all of this stuff is connected. And agriculture is considered what we would consider the base of the economy, since it meets a basic need of humans to survive, right? People need to eat, farmers produce food, farmers need tools, tractors, trucks, labor. The income that comes into farms then finds itself being redistributed throughout the rest of the economy, both farm-related and non-farm related jobs. But how can the rest of the economy operate when the base of the economy doesn't have enough money to survive, and it doesn't have enough money to pass on to the rest of the economy? And it's quite simple. It can't. This is because the ratio of payment and income still exists whether or not farmers get paid a living wage. If farmers earn a living wage, that money is going to find itself working its way throughout the rest of the real economy. There's a good line that was written by Kyle McCarthy. It says, when your food dollar goes to family farms, it gets redistributed to labor, equipment, and various other expenses and investments. When your dollar goes to Wall Street, it ends up in a Swiss bank account or up somebody's nose. Perfect. That's exactly right. Parity wouldn't just benefit farmers and create more small farms, though. It would also increase the number of non-farm jobs, and it would help revitalize rural economies and small towns. So we talk a lot about economics, and it tends to get focused on industrialization, right? Detroit, various other major cities, Cleveland, places like that have had these massive factories that have now just disappeared. But there's also a rural America that has completely disappeared. You just drive through South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, you drive through these small towns, and you see a convenience store and a Subway, and that's all that's in the town. When you can go down to Main Street and see 20, 30 buildings that were at one time vibrant little communities with local shops and restaurants and government buildings and hardware stores, now they're gone completely. And now this isn't going to completely revitalize all rural economies, but is going to go a great leap forward in doing so, right? This is the revitalization of rural America. So back in the 1980s, many people might remember the Farm Aid concerts becoming a yearly occurrence. The American farming crisis was beginning to make itself known at a public level. We had the savings and loan disaster, which was really another blunt reminder of the fact that corporations and big banks were killing off the small family farmer and then replacing him with corporate farms. In 2017, beyond niche markets like organic and co-ops, small farmers are virtually non-existent, and corporate monsters control the majority of America's food supply. As major international corporations continue to dominate American agriculture, they eliminate the diversity of nature. They introduce environmentally destructive and toxic genetically modified crops, as well as dousing every plant possible with as much herbicide and pesticides as possible. The situation might seem daunting and hopeless, but this is the solution here. It's not hopeless. The current dilemma that we're in can actually be reversed by implementing parity pricing, a ban on GMO food, a concerted effort to break up the major monopolies and corporate giants that are currently controlling the American food supply, getting a handle on the commodities futures markets. The answers to the agricultural problem already exist, and they've been proven effective in the past. This is not a theory. This has happened. It worked, and we got rid of it for the benefit of Wall Street and the big corporations. So let's stop doing that. Let's move back toward parity and really make a difference. So we'll talk more about that in the future. I really need to jump on over to the question of the WikiLeaks releases. Vault 7, the largest ever publication of confidential CIA documents. People are saying that this is another Edward Snowden. Well, that's debatable, and we can talk about that. But what I really want to do is go through the highlights of these documents, and try in the next 20 or so minutes, just try to give you an idea of what's actually happening. So this WikiLeaks release, Vault 7, we have it's actually a series of leaks, right? This is Vault 7 is the series, and then Year Zero is the first in the series, the first tranche of releases. Year Zero has 8,761 documents that have been released. They haven't even been gone through completely, right? This is a massive amount of documents. And WikiLeaks says that this reveals details of the CIA's global covert hacking program, including weaponized exploits used against company products, including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, Microsoft's Windows, and even Samsung TVs, which are turned into covert microphones. Okay? WikiLeaks tweeted the leak, which claims it came from a network inside the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley, Virginia. The most notable disclosures are that the CIA managed to bypass encryption on popular phone and messaging services such as Signal, WhatsApp, and Telegram. According to the statement from WikiLeaks, government hackers can penetrate Android phones and collect audio and message traffic before encryption is applied. Another profound revelation is that the CIA can engage in false flag cyber attacks, which portray Russia as the assailant. There we have the CIA's Remote Devices Branch, Umbrage Group, UMBRAGE. A WikiLeaks source says that it collects and maintains a substantial library of attack techniques stolen from malware produced in other states, including the Russian Federation. With Umbrage and related projects, the CIA can not only increase its total number of attack types, but also misdirect attribution by leaving behind the fingerprints of the groups that the attack techniques were stolen from. Umbrage components cover keyloggers, password collection, webcam capture, data destruction, persistence, privilege escalation, stealth, antivirus, PSP avoidance, and survey techniques. So, what does this mean? Well, we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg about what this has revealed, but I just wanted to point out that it can misdirect attribution by leaving behind the fingerprints of the groups that the attack techniques were stolen from. In other words, they can commit a cyber attack and leave behind evidence that incriminates someone else, another state, for instance. So, in other words, they could hack an institution and leave behind evidence that once an investigation is launched shows that it was, I don't know, Russia? Kind of like the possibility of the CIA to hack the DNC and blame it on Russia. This is obvious, right? We even have people on social media now tweeting that the DNC Russia hack allegation by the CIA is a joke. And it is a joke because even the own evidence, you would think that they would even put up better evidence than this, but most people who believe the Russia hysteria don't look into evidence very much. But there is no evidence for a Russian hack. The guy, at best, the guy who was accused of hacking, the DNC spoke Russian. He may have been Russian or East Ukrainian. That's all they've got. That's all the evidence that they put out. With these new revelations, it shows that maybe it was the CIA itself. We also have another type whistleblower, right? This person is saying that they wish to initiate a public debate about the security, creation, use, proliferation, and democratic control of cyber weapons. They say that policy questions should be debated in public, include whether the CIA's hacking capabilities exceed its mandated powers, and the problem of public oversight of the agency. Well, yeah, clearly it does. We have the... Oh, actually, we won't go through this yet. I want to go through the highlights in a minute. But the various techniques that Wikileaks shows is a weeping angel, right? This is developed by the CIA's Embedded Devices Branch, the EDB, which infests smart TVs, transforming them into covert microphones. After infestation, Weeping Angel places the target TV in a fake off mode so that the owner falsely believes the TV is off when it is on. In fake off mode, the TV operates as a bug, recording conversations in the room and sending them over the internet to a covert CIA server. Ladies and gentlemen, I wrote an article about this 4 years ago about smart TVs. I'm not bragging about my ability to write articles 4 years ago, but what I'm trying to point out here is for well over a decade, I and many others have been called conspiracy theorists for saying that the CIA even had these capabilities. They're doing it. It's been revealed that they are doing it. So I guess that makes every person that called us a conspiracy theorist a naive, ignorant fool then, right? You've been played. You're a fool. You've been fooled. For 10 years, you've called people telling you that your smart TVs and your cell phones and your computers are actually able to be used as spy devices. You've called them conspiracy theorists, but in reality, they were not only able to be used as spy devices, they were being used as spy devices. So you've been fooled. That's okay now. You can admit it and move forward. But perhaps you should pay attention to others and not be so smug. Do a little bit of research on your own. You would have known this long before 2017. You would have known this before 2007. You would have known this in 2001. And I think there were people talking about it before then, back in the late 90s. Remember the 1996 Telecommunications Act mandated GPS in every cell phone right when these devices were being introduced. Mandated GPS in the cell phones. 1996. But hey, if you need WikiLeaks to tell you, then Julian Assange is here, and he's telling you. You can actually go back, by the way. Google my name, Brandon Turbeville, smart TVs, Brandon Turbeville, Samsung, stuff like that. It'll come up. And also, I encourage you, Brandon Turbeville, Dynamics of Dissent. That's a good article, a very long article, which tells you that the U.S. government can take up all of your digital data that you give them for free on Facebook, on the internet, on your cell phone, and sitting in front of your TV. All that digital information can be sucked up and stored and kept for the cost of $30,000 a year. Drop in the bucket for the U.S. government. Now, that's not $30,000 a person. That's $30,000 per 300 million people. That's $30,000, less than the cost of a home. The U.S. government can keep everyone's digital data. Free country. So this is WikiLeaks, Julian Assange. There's an extreme proliferation risk in the development of cyber weapons. Comparisons can be drawn between the uncontrolled proliferation of such weapons, which results from the inability to contain them, combined with their high market value and the global arms trade. But the significance of year zero goes well beyond the choice between cyber war and cyber peace. The disclosure is also exceptional from a political, legal, and forensic aspect or perspective. So let's look at some of the highlights from Vault 7. We have year zero is introducing the scope and direction of the CIA's global covert hacking program. Its malware arsenal and dozens of zero-day weaponized exploits against a wide range of U.S. and European company products, including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, and Microsoft Windows, even Samsung TVs, which are turned into covert microphone. Now, don't believe for a second that it's just Apple or just Google or just Microsoft. These things have back doors in them which can be used. But there's also a reason why Apple, iPhone, and Google are just absolutely ubiquitous now. That, I mean, when a company becomes a verb, you know that it's sort of that it's ubiquitous. So these companies, I wouldn't say they're necessarily monopolies, but they're together. They are, right. There's no legitimate low-level applications of technology that would rival Google or Apple, and we know that Google has cooperated. That we know that I think Microsoft has cooperated, and probably Apple cooperated with the U.S. government in involving itself in so-called revolutions and rebellions overseas, even here. They've done it here. So don't believe that the CIA had to go in and sneak through back doors either. This stuff, there's not a back door. They walk right through the front door. The CIA is the doorman for Google, right? Anything you give to Google goes direct to the CIA and the NSA and the supercomputers that they have. All right, so what else do we have? Wikileaks claims that the CIA lost control of the majority of its hacking arsenal, including malware, viruses, trojans, weaponized zero-day exploits, malware remote control systems, and associated documentation. This extraordinary collection, which amounts to more than several hundred million lines of code, gives its possessor the entire hacking capacity of the CIA. The archive appears to have been circulated among former U.S. government hackers and contractors in an unauthorized manner, one of whom has provided WikiLeaks with portions of the archives. In other words, what this means is that the source, I hope this doesn't give away the source, but it's it's right there, but this individual must have come across this information by virtue of it being available, and and sent it to WikiLeaks. By the end of 2016, CIA's hacking division, which formerly falls under the agency's Center for Cyber Intelligence, had over 5,000 registered users and had produced more than 1,000 hacking systems, trojans, viruses, and other weaponized malware. Such is the scale of the CIA's undertaking that by 2016, its hackers had utilized more code than that used to run Facebook. The CIA had created, in effect, its own NSA with even less accountability and without publicly answering the question as to whether such a massive budgetary spend on duplicating the capacities of a rival agency could be justified. Once a single cyber weapon is loose, it can spread around the world in seconds to be used by rival states, cyber mafia, teenage hackers alike. Well, don't think that they are just going to accidentally lose this hacking malware. Of course, it'll be released so that the teenage hackers can go out and hack, and then it can be used as a justification to crack down and impose more security on the internet, which is, of course, the crackdown on the internet and the application of more apps and antivirus software and more backdoors. So, all of that. Now, the Snowden 2.0 thing, right? In a statement to WikiLeaks, the source details policy questions that they say urgently needed to be debated in public, including whether the CIA's hacking capabilities exceed its mandated powers and the problem of public oversight of the agency. The source wishes to initiate a public debate about the security, creation, use, proliferation, and democratic control of cyber weapons. Now, also, I should point out that in a way, this is like the Snowden leaks, right? There is nothing new, really, in these leaks. We have to be aware of that because we know for a fact that the CIA has the capability to do this and that it has done it. But what it serves as confirmation, actual confirmation that the CIA is doing it, has the ability to do it, and is doing it. Here's what it also shows. Look at who's covering the leaks. Look at who covered the Edward Snowden leaks, right? Edward Snowden, nobody knew who he was. All of a sudden, first day these documents are released, he's on CNN, he's on Fox, he's on MSNBC, he's on every major television outlet, and it's 24/7. It's Edward Snowden 24/7. He flies across the world, lands in Russia, he does conference calls. Who's covering these leaks, right? Nobody, really. The alternative media is covering the leaks, and the mainstream media, look at what they're saying, right? They're saying that Assange is now facilitating treason, that that whoever this person was is a traitor. The other headlines that I saw was Assange officially joins the Trump administration. Not true. Saying that the CIA is hacking and spying is not joining the Trump administration. I know whereof I speak because I am not part of the Trump administration. I've been doing this for many years, pointing out about CIA hacking. First published in 2001 regarding the ability of the U.S. intelligence community to hack people. Certainly not a member of the Trump administration for saying that. But some people do believe that this reveals, and I think they have legitimate reasons to suggest that there might be a war in the deep state, right? Because we see the U.S. government deep state. One of them comes out with, and obviously the Russia hysteria, right? The Trump is part of Russia. Russia's funding Trump, and the communists are coming, and all that kind of stuff. And then we see Michael Flynn resignation, and then a few weeks later we see leaks coming from Wikileaks, and it's a response. Now you can see which side actually has real information, right? Because the Michael Flynn thing was bullshit. The guy didn't do anything wrong. Psychopath as he may be, anti-Iran fanatic as he may be, he didn't do anything wrong. And Jeff Sessions, the drug war relic, this clown who has absolutely no business in an authoritative position, didn't do anything wrong in terms of the Russia scale, but they're trying to get him out. So you're seeing that there's a battle actually taking place between the deep state, unless it's all theater, and I will hold that. I will qualify my statements with that and hedge my bets, because we live in the twilight zone now, and I can't put anything out of the realm of possibility. But what I would suggest would be that it's imperative that we don't fanatically, unquestioningly start taking sides in this battle between two different sides of the deep state. It's imperative that we don't take sides. One other thing that I want to say, the CIA has the ability to infect vehicle control systems. It would permit the CIA to engage in nearly undetectable assassinations. Michael Hastings, anyone? The ability to control cars. How about that? Such like the Russian politician who had this very bizarre wreck where he just crossed two lanes and ran into oncoming traffic. Very, very bizarre. And if you watch the video, it's just incredibly odd. But we don't have time to go through all this. Believe me, there are hours of discussions that we could do over this, over these 8,000 documents. Maybe we'll pick it up next week and discuss it some more. But for now, I encourage everybody to go check my article out on the subject, which would be at BrandonTurbeville.com, activistpost.com, but definitely check it out there. BrandonTurbeville.com will have a lot of different stuff. I didn't even plug the website this time, but please go there in any event. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. We'll see you next week.
They told us to pack up our bags and head south. They said that the luck of the Irish ran out. They told us they burned down our farms and our stores. They cursed us for cowards and I was for whores. I wrote it down was out down in the field. A group of armed Yankees rode up on his heels. They
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.